Warriors of the Infinite, welcome to REN-SHEN Half Spirit, Chapter 14, Escape to China. This is the third part of REN-SHEN Half Spirit. This is book 3, titled The Revelators. When the Tao is lost, there is goodness. When goodness is lost, there is morality. When morality is lost, there is ritual. Ritual is the husk of true faith, the beginning of chaos. Lao Tzu, Tao Te Ching. It's okay. Don't worry. It's okay. The distant yet familiar voice sounded reassuring. There was too much noise. Images were only fleetingly visible. If only he could focus for longer than a split second. Everything was a blur as he was propelled forward at an impossible velocity. The incessant noise was getting louder, thunderous and pulsating. His head was going to explode if it didn't subside soon. "It's okay, not much longer now," said the somewhat closer voice. The relentless noise suddenly disappeared, and the silence was even more disconcerting than the thunderous cacophony of a moment earlier. An infinite white space. Was it Kumacho's lobby? He thought to himself. He steeled himself and found his fighting position. The voice was clear. "That's better. Now you might hear me more clearly." The blonde woman to his right said, "I sometimes forget what it feels like the first time you pass. Don't worry. There's nothing to fear here. I'm with you. It takes a little time." Steve was fighting his disorientation. He ascertained he was somewhere else. It wasn't Kumacho's lobby. His lobby wasn't as big as the space he was in. "This is endless," he said, as he tried to make sense of the dimensions he was immersed in. Then, as if he was stabbed in the heart again, all the memories came back to him. Not just some of the memories, all of them. Literally everything. He remembered his mother's first caress when he was born, her sweet eyes and voice. He remembered his youth. He remembered his school life, his training. The sweetest times with his beautiful girlfriend, his wife. "Megumi," he cried, while clutching at his chest. "My wife, my everything. No, no, she can't be dead. She didn't deserve to die. Our baby. How could I let this happen?" The memories reinforced the gravity of the horror he had experienced. "A painful end," the woman said. In his mind, Steve was trying to be stoic, yet his ability to control himself was gone. The sheer vastness of his grief consumed him. He cried. He called for his wife. He whimpered and sobbed for her. The beautiful girl whom he treasured and wanted to grow old with. Gone. "It was all my fault. I should have been smarter, stronger. I could have saved her," he said. The blonde woman turned to face him. Steve had never seen her before, yet he knew it was Temyana. The right-hand side of her face was burnt. It seemed more vivid than when he met that little girl so many years ago. He could see the outline of the Macedonian sun rosette on her right cheek. She said, No, you couldn't have saved her. It was her destiny. The same way that sword would inevitably pass through your heart. Some things simply must come to pass. And now you are left with a decision no man has ever made before. You can choose whether you want to live or die. Temyana proceeded to explain the significance of the sword and the magic weaved into the blade by his very own ancestor, the great Alexander. There were gaps in her knowledge about the magic of the sword. She explained how the sword found its way to the priest king, and finally, from the priest king to the demon Kumacho. Steve was grieving deeply. His mind returned to the horror of losing his Megumi. Temyana immediately noticed he was inside his own thoughts. "Listen! This is extremely important," she said. "You can choose to live, but your life will be very different. The world will never look the same again. You will see the darkness. The world is full of it. It's relentless, it is inevitable, and it is chaos. And once you become fully desensitized to it, it calls you and sends its best face to beckon and tempt you. But if you choose to pass, to die, your immortal soul can finally rest and join the infinite. Steve stopped her. I've nothing left. My life only brings death to the ones who love me. There's nothing there for me. I choose to die. Do what you must. All the ones I love are already gone. Temyana said, I have an oath to your bloodline. You are the last of your line. If you choose to pass, then my last obligation is to guide you through, and then we can both join the infinite. But I need you to answer me. Do you choose to die now? Yeah, fuck everything. Make it all end, he commanded her. Temyana looked relieved. The burden of her ancient oath was finally about to come to an end. She said, I thought you might be one of the biggest of your bloodline. You burned too brightly, too soon. She instructed Steve to place his hand on her shoulder and not let go under any circumstance. Temyana gestured with her hand and they were suddenly moving at cosmic speed. The infinite white space had changed to an abstracted galaxial landscape as they rocketed interdimensionally through time and space, unlike the cacophonous upheaval of Steve's immersion into the infinite white. This was silent, beautiful, and peaceful. Temyana said, sometimes I just want to stay here forever. Your father agreed, and so did his father. Well, actually, your entire bloodline felt the same way. This will be the last time I will experience it. I've never been this far in my full form since before the great Alexander. It will end soon, and you will find a peace you can't begin to imagine. Steve embraced the serenity of the journey. He noticed his and Temyana's physical forms were fading, yet he knew precisely where his extremities ended and where hers began. Suddenly, Temyana shrieked. Her physical form reappeared and she seemed tethered to a point from where they had started their journey. She was whipped back and pulled away from Steve. Steve could hear her clearly in the galaxial void as she frantically explained, this can't be. There's nothing forcing me back. Your bloodline is finished. Wait, unless... Oh my gods, yes, amazing, I feel it. Your son lives. My oath compels me to return to him. You are almost there. Focus on your loved ones and you will pass to the infinite. I'll see you again. Steve's universe of serenity immediately evaporated. Every instinct told him not to pass. He couldn't leave his defenseless child in that world. His choice was immediate, but his soul was still hurtling towards the infinite. He rejected his deceased loved ones and shouted at the gods, no, he needs me. But his soul was still rocketing further away from where he began. His spirit, activated without conscious thought, his life force had transformed. What recently had become transparent filled the entire celestial void. His form had become a pure orange fire and fully formed into the most majestic lion. He roared his rejection of the infinite and saw the galaxial void consumed by his energy. As immediately as the energy pulse filled the void, it returned back to the majestic lion with the same impossible velocity. Steve saw the outline of his form, then drew his first breath after what may have been hours or years. He clutched at his chest and saw the blur of the streetlights of Okinawa. The car stopped and Steve saw the familiar car park lights of the hospital where Tanya was recovering. Look, Ishiganto! He lives! He lives! Impossible! People gathered around the car and peered inside. One opened the door. He heard a complete spectrum of human responses, exclamations and murmurs of shock, confusion, disbelief, joy, surprise, horror, and elation. Steve looked outside the car window and saw outlines of people, but to his horror, there were demons everywhere, similar to the ones he saw in Kumacho's lobby when the blade pierced his heart. They were clinging to the people who were looking at him. They were disgusting. Steve was in pain and horrified. He tried to muster some energy to fight what appeared to be his enemy, but the pain in his chest was too intense. He couldn't move. The people seemed sincere, but the visual reality was unbearable. Steve couldn't understand why the people weren't reacting to the obvious infestation of filthy, slithering agents of darkness. One voice rose above the commotion. "Ishiganto, I am a doctor at this hospital. I need to look at you. We are all here to help you. There is nothing to fear. They said you were dead." Steve tried to push him away, but was too weak. His chest felt like it was on fire. He looked down at his chest and it was still glowing where the blade had penetrated. "My Megumi, my son," he hoarsely groaned. The doctor replied, "We managed to save your son. We are sorry about your wife." Steve again tried to rise, but his body was not functioning. "Take me to my baby," he said. The doctor stuttered in response. Your baby is gone. Your baby is gone." "What? Where?" Steve again tried to get up. A couple of men reached in the car to try and settle him. He saw the demon slide off them onto his arms. They looked like they touched boiling oil when they reached him. They were immediately repelled. A commanding voice boomed, "Get out of my way, you idiots. Close the door and give me the keys. Don't make me ask again. We don't have much time." One of the crowd said, "Not him. He works for Kumicho. Stop him." The man said, "I just saved his son and now I'll try to save him if you can all get the fuck out of my way. Hurry, the keys. I warn you, there is no time to waste." The car started and they were moving again. Steve was lying in the back of the car and the blur of the streetlights almost looked like his celestial journey. But the persistent burning pain in his chest reminded him he had left that long behind. He tried to focus on the driver. He couldn't see any hint of those demons he saw earlier. The driver was unblemished. Steve said, "They were everywhere. But you were clean. I don't see any attached to you." The driver said, "Some will return. They inevitably will. But you destroyed my worst one. I am grateful and indebted to you." Something about the timbre of the voice of the driver. Steve again tried to look at the driver. The silhouette was almost familiar. A tall, lean man. A sliver of clarity sliced through the haze of Steve's cognitive ability. "It's you!" As Steve tried to will himself forward from the back of the seat. "I will kill you! I'll fucking kill you!" Steve screamed until all his energy was spent. He fainted as the car kept traveling at speed. Steve woke to find himself being dragged out of the car by his nemesis, Hiro. Steve again tried to resist, but he was too weak. The man tried to pacify Steve. "Stop resisting. I'm trying to help you. You said I was unblemished. It's true. My demons are gone. At least for now. I must help you get away from here. Kumicho is already searching for you. He doesn't know your baby lives. I took Megumi to the hospital after you destroyed my worst demon. I saved your baby. The baby is with your friend, Tanya. Taki's people, your Ishiganto people, are hiding them. They will not be safe anywhere in Japan. And you will not be safe either. You are not strong enough to help them now. Do you understand? I am not your enemy. I owe you my life." Steve couldn't reconcile the man before him with the evil demon Hiro that killed and created so much pain in his life. He was unblemished. A pilot in the distance was waiting on the foreshore, not far from a small seaplane floating on the ocean. The pilot had some small slippery serpentine demons attached to him. Hiro said, "He is one of your followers, an Ishiganto follower. I have people waiting for us in China. They are not good people, but they follow instructions well. We must both leave Japan, if we are to have any chance. You must stay hidden. Kumicho knows people there, but there are always negotiations when he deals with one of the few over there. Time is of the essence. Quickly!" Hiro called the pilot to help him. They assisted Steve to the seaplane. Steve was strapped in next to his former nemesis and barely able to move. Hiro told Steve how much he regretted what his demon did to Mike. He explained how it had been many years since his spirit had been so pure. He wasn't sure how long it would last. Everyone has their demons. If I remain in Japan, it won't be long before some demons will find me, and Kumacho finds both of us. I will not be able to stay with you for long. I will make sure you are safe and able to recover, then I must move on, he said. Steve was physically incapable of moving, but he understood the hero next to him was a very different one from the hero that haunted his dreams. He offered Steve some morphine tablets to help dull his pain. Steve refused, but Hiro, his unlikely ally, insisted they would dull the pain. Steve's pain was not subsiding, and it was unbearable. He eventually acquiesced. He noticed the pilot's demons had disappeared just before fading into a dreamless and defenseless sleep. My goodness, did you see that? He was in heaven. Was it heaven? Some void. He'd clearly moved into some other part of consciousness, perhaps, or another world, heaven. Maybe heaven. Maybe he was on his way to heaven. Or if we're following the Orphic cult, perhaps he was going to the underworld. We don't really know, do we? So, he was definitely not in Okinawa. Certainly his soul wasn't anyway. It had gone somewhere else, and Temyana was right there with him. She was guiding him. She was his guide to the underworld, or to heaven, or wherever it is. Yet to be determined, perhaps. He didn't quite reach it. Something happened. Temyana was pulled back. She had to go back. She realized the offspring existed. The bloodline continued. Steve's son lived. She got pulled back. Steve refused to leave his son there. No parents. His mother dead. Clearly she was dead. We know that. There's no way Steve's going to leave his son. There's no way Yoshiganto's going to leave his son. He rejected the infinite. The infinite. Whatever it is, heaven, all the good stuff. He rejected it and said, no way, not for me. I'm going back to my son. He had a choice. Remember that sword. The sword could not kill the bloodline of Alexander. But clearly, Temyana warned him he would see the world very differently. He'd see the darkness. It would be immediately obvious to him now. Do we want, imagine you in that situation. Ignorance is bliss. Imagine all of a sudden you can see it all. You just see the darkness everywhere and you're sort of immersed in it. Even people that support you, people that are good, have still got their demons. I think it's extraordinarily realistic. Let's not kid ourselves. Extraordinarily realistic. We've all got our demons, okay? I think I'm pretty good most of the time. That's my theory anyway. But he can see them now. He's totally on top of it all. He's in extreme pain. He woke up just out the front of the hospital. Who knows how long he was under for? Doesn't look like it was that long, but it might have been a few hours. They got Megumi to the hospital. They managed to take the baby out. They couldn't save her, but the baby survived, thankfully. He saw all the people with demons covered. They were covered in demons, and yet they were all interested in him. And of all the people crushing through the crowd, Hiro, dear Lord, of all people, demon was banished, destroyed. His biggest demon was destroyed. Clearly, Steve's lion banished all of Hiro's demons at that point. He was unblemished. Unblemished, not a mark on him, nothing of darkness attached to him. Clearly a very capable guy. He'd been running around doing all Kumacho's work. Let's call him number 2 IC, second in charge there. So he was running around doing anything for Kumacho, whatever he needed. He knew people. He knew how to make things happen. told all those idiots to get out of the way. Before he did that, the doctor did tell him, one of Ishiganto's followers, he said, your wife is dead. That's terrible. It crushes me, just the thought of it. He said, your baby lived. We saved your baby. And then when Steve asked where his baby was, he wanted immediately. He wanted to get to his son. He said, your baby's gone. He stuttered. Your baby is gone. He was a little bit freaked out, obviously. Just to rub salt in the wound of poor Steve. And who's the baby with? With Tanya. Tanya, who'd only recently recovered, thankfully. At least she was well. And Ishiganto's followers whisked her away somewhere and hid her. And hid or warned that she would be, they would hunt her down no matter what. For whatever reason, she wasn't safe in Japan, and nor was his son. Steve had to save his son. But he couldn't move. He was in pain. His chest was glowing orange. Glowing orange. Clearly, this is beyond normal, beyond human at this point. What have we got here? Oh, yet to be determined. We're heading to China. We're on a plane, a seaplane. It was waiting on the shores there of Okinawa. One of Ishiganto's followers, a pilot, Hiro organised it. Hopped in the plane, gave him some morphine tablets. Steve didn't want them, doesn't like drugs at all. Took him. He was in extreme pain. He took him. He watched everything fade, including the demons. Dulled the pain and perhaps dulled the sense that could see the demons. Perhaps. Interesting. I don't have much more to add to that. It's a pretty short one, but I hope you like my exploration of life beyond death, perhaps. It's something that intrigues me. What the hell does it look like? Do we live? Does anything happen? Do we just fade away and disappear? Personally, I'd like to think that energy just transforms and goes somewhere else. Where does it go? It depends on your faith, perhaps. It depends on how you see the world. The reality is, I don't think anyone genuinely knows. A lot of people have faith in what they know. The ones who've got proof are dead. They're too dead to tell us. I'm sorry. It is what it is. So, I don't know, but conceptually, the Chinese talk about the 10 heavens. And you progress through the heavens. And they don't like mentioning the 10th heaven because that's perfection. And they go 9 heavens. They just go one back from that. Because it's kind of like just off perfection. Because it's just too much to even consider. When you're at one with perhaps God, when you're in heaven, when you're in that state, how could we begin to define that? How could we begin to create dialogue about that perfection? It's like people who can't recognize what a ship looks like if they've never seen one in their lives. There's tests done on islanders who'd never seen a ship before, and they literally couldn't see it in the distance, even though it was right in front of them. Their minds weren't conditioned to even seeing something that they'd never seen before, and it just didn't even register in their brains. So that's how particularly brilliant us human beings are. So how on earth are we going to try and explain the notion of heaven or some sort of world beyond our existing mortal world that we live in right now? So I kind of explored that a little bit and wanted to think about that for a moment as we delved into Steve's excursion. Notwithstanding any of that, he rejected it all. He came back for his son. It's pretty cool. No choice. Let's not kid ourselves. No choice. He's doing it. He's looking for his young man. He's going to raise him right. That's what he's going to do. No one else is going to do it, just like his dad did for him. On his own, he'll do it and make sure his kid is safe all the time. Raise him properly. Teach him properly. That's the game plan. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. That was chapter 14, Escape to China. Damn. We're there. Next few chapters, the remainder of the book is all in China. The Celestial Empire. God, it's had some names. What a rich history. This is going to be fun. If you like Japan, I'm sure you'll enjoy China. If you like a good kung fu movie, you got it, friends. You've got it good. All right. Thank you very much. See you very shortly.